Should same-sex marriage ceremonies be allowed on military bases? Why would the government force Christian groups and hospitals to pay for drugs that may cause abortions? And the latest on the congressional investigation of Planned Parenthood. This is the CitizenLink report. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard along with Ashley Horne, our federal policy analyst. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Stuart.
First, we've got this fight involving the redefinition of marriage and the military. Tell us what's happening.
That's true. We know that the policy known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, also a law, was repealed so that now we have openly gay service members in the military. The problem now is, okay, can military chaplains, or should they be performing same-sex ceremonies on military installations? We've got people in the House, members of Congress saying, you know what, no, that goes too far. We don't want that happening. And so there's a letter circulating right now from members of the House asking the Senate to please include in the 2012 defense spending bill a provision that says no, military bases, any federal property should not be used for gay marriage, so to speak. And we already have that kind of provision in the House version of the spending bill, so we'll have to see what they do to reconcile those.
And the problem underlying this is you've got the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a federal law saying that the federal government will only recognize marriages between a man and a woman. But you've got military bases in places like Massachusetts and New York where same-sex marriage is legal, so they're trying to wade through that. Now, we saw a memo that came out before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, directing chaplains to go ahead with these ceremonies, but then that got pulled back. But then another one was released that changed the language a bit. Tell us what that was about.
The government was still really vague about whether or not they could use military bases for marriage ceremonies. And they never actually said the word marriage. But as you just pointed out, the Defense of Marriage Act, it's under attack all over the country. We've seen it in the court systems. We're seeing it now in legislation. We've got a DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act repeal coming down the pipe. So this is not a surprise, and it isn't a surprise that the government's going to try to get around the Defense of Marriage Act whenever they can.
Meanwhile, over at the Department of Health and Human Services, they're busy writing the regulations for the implementation of the new health care law. And along with that goes this idea of forcing Christian organizations, think in terms of Christian hospitals or Christian groups that may be nonprofits, and in their private health care plans to have to pay for drugs that may cause abortion. And the federal government has kept that exemption pretty narrow. It looks like many groups would not be included.
That's right. The mandate is, you know what, you have to provide contraception. Religious groups saying, hey, you know what, we have a moral and ethical objection to passing out or mandating coverage on contraception that may cause an abortion. And so CitizenLink went ahead and submitted a comment to the HHS, to Health and Human Services, saying, you know what, we want you to broaden the religious exemption for religious providers so that we don't have to make those kinds of difficult choices. In fact, I'll just read it. The rule, we said, poses an unprecedented threat to religious freedom, and an expanded religious exemption is a step toward protecting religious liberty. And so that's what we would like to see.
Now, when this thing was being brought through Congress, we kept hearing over and over again, oh no, there's no abortion in this bill whatsoever, any way, shape, or form. But time after time, we're having to fight this battle as we go along and see this thing put into play.
Right, and we'll explain it as many times as we need to. It's very clear that there is abortion covered in the health care law. It's back to the conscience protection, though. There is a bill in Congress, Respect for Rights of Conscience Act, and that's kind of Congress's answer to this regulation that might force religious providers to carry contraception they don't want to.
We've been seeing several stories lately in the news where the federal government is taking an extremely narrow interpretation when it comes to religious groups and whether funding can go to them or how they get dealt with here in the healthcare law. This seems to be the way things are right now.
It's not a good time for religious groups under this administration.
Now, finally, I wanted to talk about the House of Representatives. We have an ongoing investigation into Planned Parenthood and its practices. And so far, the nation's largest abortion seller has not been especially cooperative.
Not really. Congress is saying, hey, you know what? We want to have a hearing or at least an investigation into some of these practices that have been some of these allegations, we should say, against Planned Parenthood, one of them being improper billing practices. We're talking about underreporting of statutory rape and sex trafficking as well. So Congress is asking for documentation, answers, and so far Planned Parenthood has missed both deadlines. So no surprise there, but we do want to see them come forward and at least give us some information.
Now, in the last election, we saw a ProLife Majority take over the House, and that is what set up the possibility even of this kind of investigation taking place.
Yes, it's wonderful to even have the ability now with this pro-life majority to have an investigation and really start digging deeper into this issue.
All right. Ashley, thank you for keeping us up to date on what's happening on Capitol Hill. We appreciate your insights.
Sure, thanks.
And we appreciate you for watching. Thank you for all of your comments. We've gotten quite a few notes from you thanking us for our insights into the presidential candidates over the last few weeks. We appreciate that. Others have been a little critical of those comments. We understand that as well. We all kind of have our opinions about these things, and it's good to share them, talk about them, and try to figure out what's the best path for all of us to take. So please pray for our elected officials, pray for those running for office, and pray for the American people as they make an important decision over the next 12 months about who will lead this country. And remember, stand tall and be heard.